In the spring of 1983, Eddie Jackson would come home. In the spring of 1984, Courtney Brown would come home. After both being released from Milan Federal Penitentiary, they both discovered the city that they once ruled was now under a new regime. There was a phenomenon going on in this town. That phenomenon was YBI.
He was dealing with the Columbus cartel. When Cartelitas asked him about, he had pretty good influence with the government.
My problem became, I need some motherfuckers to sit at the hookup table and get this shit together, because this shit rolling. This is motherfucking rolling thunder, man. This ain't no motherfucking hustle that you gonna see every day.
We rich. It's on. We can rob. It's on. It's on.
You raided the house on French Road.
So many times.
Say it. Can you say that for us?
So many times.
We never worried about getting caught by the local or state authorities. Our fear was always federal conspiracy case. Not even really a possession case. You weren't gonna catch us with it. If the local cops can catch you, you're not very good. Because the only people the local cops catch are people who are advertising they're doing wrong.
You know, I told him to do a certain thing a certain way. He did it differently than I told him, and he ended up getting killed.
I would never know. You know, I didn't know. I just didn't know. You know, it was because maybe that was the cool thing, you know what I'm saying? Because I could look at him authentic as who he was instead of who his pops was.
But you gotta understand at the level Pop and them was playing at, they wake up in the morning thinking about how to get away with their hustle. They go to bed at night thinking about how to get away with their hustle. They spend all afternoon rehearsing and going over how to get away with their hustle. It's not a hobby.
Oh, I'm so sorry, and we were mean people and bad people, and we preyed upon people who've got afflictions and addictions and suffer from dysfunction. That's the bullshit. We come from the same environments that some silly people suggest we destroyed. We're the products of those neighborhoods. Our families, myself included, have suffered from drug addiction, active addictions. We've lost family members to the streets via murder and mayhem. The same people that you call me and my ilk, the predators, we're the same. We are the real people who this shit is happening to. My family and a few of our associates and cliques were the survivors that were able to elevate to be able to escape all the murder and mayhem. And then we got a taste of what the middle class of America and the entrepreneurial class of America was living like. And lo and behold, we figured out once you get enough capital, you can actually set yourself up to where you don't have to live and worry about the murder and mayhem that's been plaguing us and people like us for generations. Well, you know, until you brought your perspective of what it was, the definition of a street person, and your definition was a very direct definition. Street person meaning people who spend their time outside wandering the streets. I lived in my own little bubble of generational people in organized crime. So when I would say he in the streets, that meant not only is he involved in some level of criminality, but he's involved in a somewhat high level of criminality. Because he'd be like, he getting money in the streets.
But that don't mean you hang out at the liquor store.
No, just the opposite.
Just the opposite.
The people who, now one said that the people who I was saying, or that we would say in our little bubble, they in the streets, those are the people that you would never see on the streets. Or every blue moon, they visited the streets that they ran. And now they worked, they business took place on the streets, they controlled the streets, but you wasn't gonna physically catch them on the streets. In fact, that was the whole thing, was to move up very quickly so you wouldn't be on the streets.
It truly was, especially before just before television everywhere. I remember being in jail in the 90s and like a big story would be like, oh, once the Chambers brothers drove down our street and everyone came outside. Like, that was the best anecdote that he had to tell of his whole life.
Yeah, We, as I say, that we're in kind of upper management or ownership of the organized crime little divisions, the family affairs that was going on. When we would actually be on the street, that was for like morale or occasionally just to check on your business, make sure things is running smooth, and like that was. But the people who was living on the streets of that bottom of the end, kind of the lower part of that urban existence. Like anything, you know it, but you're not really involved in it, right? And you know all of the social ills and traps and tragedies that are occurring on that level of the street life. So you know not to be around it. You know, because you always know that tragedy is always gonna happen on the block. So you can't be on the block too often. Unless you got some kind of internal business issue that demands that upper management or ownership be on location for a minute to straighten out whatever kind of street beef is going on, or why the bag money ain't, why we went from doing $20,000 a day to doing $1,000 a day, and you're like, something wrong. I need to send myself or upper management to the block to figure out what's going on with you people.
So now as a 50-some-year-old man with experience, and you're not in it anymore and looking back, what would you say to someone who says, well, if your families didn't let themselves or their kids be out in these environments, and you knew, oh, we can't be out, like you said, tragedy is happening all the time, what would you say to somebody who said, well, you're the predators?
I mean, I would say that I'm not, that I can give you two answers. You want the political correct one?
I want all of them.
So the political correct one would go something like, oh, I'm so sorry, and we were mean people and bad people, and we preyed upon people who've got afflictions and addictions and suffer from dysfunction. That's the bullshit. We come from the same environments that some silly people suggest we destroyed. We're the products of those neighborhoods. Our families, myself included, have suffered from drug addiction, active addictions. We've lost family members to the streets via murder and mayhem. The same people that you call me and my ilk, the predators, we're the same. We are the real people who this shit is happening to. My family and a few of our associates and cliques were the survivors that were able to elevate to be able to escape all the murder and mayhem. And then we got a taste of what the middle class of America and the entrepreneurial class of America was living like. And lo and behold, we figured out once you get enough capital, you can actually set yourself up to where you don't have to live and worry about the murder and mayhem that's been plaguing us and people like us for generations. So my answer to say that we were a predator, I mean, I don't know how you can be a predator when it's the jungle. There is a hierarchy in the jungle. In a capitalist society, there's got to be a consumer and there's got to be a producer. So if we African Americans, Hispanic Americans, or white working class people who took a shot in the streets, doing some things outside the justifications of the law, so that we could escape the murder and mayhem that we're being accused of causing. It was our reality. There's a line in The Godfather 3, the Michael Corleone character. And he says, I did the things I did so that my family would never have to know the horrors of the world. If you know what really can happen to you in certain environments, if you spent enough time in the projects, if you come from where we come from, and you know that what poverty and desperation can do to a person, you'll move heaven and earth to separate yourself from that situation. So I'm not the one to make any apologies.
Okay, bridging on from that sounds good, but as you've told us, your particular family didn't enter into serious crime until your father was 30 years old. You had a stable job, you already had made it out to projects, Father was not somebody that had even seen drugs. What to this day doesn't even have a drink.
Correct.
So he was already, you guys are already out of the jungle. Now the jungle was nearby, you weren't that far, but you weren't in the jungle. You had made what for most people was, you know, the American dreams and be a homeowner. Now, let me edit part 2 to that to give you, this is maybe a lot to think about, but as we also know, studies of CEOs show that, I don't know what, 1% of U.S. population is a sociopath. Most CEOs of Fortune 500 companies are high on the sociopathy. Do you feel, because your father's so interesting, that it's so different from almost anyone else of entering, he wasn't someone that was in a gang when he was young. There was none of that.
He's a square.
That's right. What, you were out of the jungle itself and had some degree of comfort and safety, or living in a good neighborhood of Detroit at the time. He had a good job. Do you think your father, and maybe even you, is somewhere on the sociopathy scale? In the CEO sense. I mean, your father's not a mean, evil person. He's a great family man, but...
I mean, okay, so I'll justify a Pop's situation. Pops had knew poverty as a child growing up.
And real racism.
And real racism
and all
and
that.
segregation, so... And when he hooked up with Eddie, his intention was not to become a kingpin or to have international drugs.
What do you think? What do you think they thought it just happened? Is that what happens in the drug business? To a lot of people get big, where like, oh, I'm just trying to make 100,000, and then it just.
No one, maybe out bar Eddie Jackson, even had the wildest fantasy that they're going to be living in the suburbs and they'll be traveling the world and there'll be diamonds and furs. They were broke. You know, Eddie couldn't pay my dad back a $50 loan. When my dad goes to collect a $50 loan from Eddie, 6 months then pass and Eddie's driving Cadillacs and the ascent has come. So if we want, I never would put myself in their situations for the things I did. First of all, the majority of my criminality, my personal, was in service of my father and his situation. Right, I was involved in these activities as service of my father, at his bequest and at his pleasure. And when he was displeased with me, I'd get fired. Then he'd get back pleased with me and I'd get rehired. But so I say that to say, on that what's the word you use?
Socioeconomic?
No,
sociopathy.
Sociopathy. Again, this may not be commonly said. Once you get money, you become a much more serious, potentially dangerous person. The poor man doesn't know enough. The poor man don't know enough to be dangerous. The poor man don't even know enough to be serious enough about keeping it. But if you're born into it, and you've had just a taste of what it is not to have it, yeah. So in that way, I'm a much more sinister man than my father. Much more.
Oh, really?
And I'm definitely much more, I'm a peace-loving man, but my father's much bigger heart than me.
So you use the word sinister, and we won't get too much in that, but I mean, that's a strong word. Do you mean by that, like, it's very easy for you to say, well, this human being ain't part of me or my whatever, so whatever happens? Or I don't need to help them, or what does that mean without being too specific?
He could fathom not having the things he's grown accustomed to much easier than I could. So what I might, in a different time, the things that I might have been more comfortable with doing to make sure that our situation is protected, he might not have been. But again, he raised me right, but it's just, I don't think I'm not unique like that. I think the second generations of anybody who comes from, you see the world different. And I mean, again, I'm just gonna put it out there, because poor people are naive.
That's half the reason why they stay poor. It's because they deal in these good, bad, evil, good, shouldn't do. Well, when you've been exposed to the world, when you come from resources, you understand there is no good people, there are no bad people. They're just people. And people do things. And that the rich and the powerful don't have time for words like pity, mercy, fairness. Those are illusions they give the poor to keep them poor. That doesn't exist. So people, the longer a person has been exposed to poverty and all of those malfeasance of thinkings that they feed the poor to keep them poor, the rich will do whatever. And then once you realize that once we get a couple M's, that ain't even no money. It was only money because we used to not be able to pay rent. We used to be catching the bus, so if mom and daddy and them was catching the bus and coming up on mama and them was coming up in the projects waiting for their uncles to give them 25 cents so they could have lunch, their idea, of making it is like you said, shit, you on Mark Twain and you was the cashier at the grocery store and your husband the bus driver, you made it. Well, if you grow up because of them, if you grow up the way I grew up, bus driver lifestyle and cashier at the grocery store, that ain't gonna do it. I wasn't put here to live like that. Now, see, I just say it, and it's okay when people who don't have the melon that I have say these things all the time. I wasn't put on this earth to live like that. I'm not gonna be broke. And I hear people say, well, they should stop doing that. There's some people who've already made the decision a long time ago. If it's a choice between freedom and poverty, I'll take my chances with losing my freedom. But what I ain't gonna do is be poor. What I ain't gonna do is let other people dictate the futures of myself and my family.
Perfect. Okay, let's stay on here.
And Mr. Illuminati, also what I ain't gonna do, Mr. Illuminati, is get you good white folks who run this world's business. And I'm gonna stay my ass on 7 Mile and get all this nigga money and leave you people alone.
African American.
African American money. Yeah. And I appreciate the good education that y'all allow me to attain, Mr. Illuminati. And I'm not gonna do too much more talking to try to enlighten these poor folks on how y'all run y'all system. Because I understand I talked too much already, Mr. Illuminati, by explaining to these poor people that the reason why they poor is because they ain't thinking about getting no money.
We had talked before, and a good point you had brought up, going back to what you said, was you as a child listening to your mother and your father talk about the television interview and your views on everybody when that happened.
So, right, Lou,
okay, yeah.
So I'm 10 years old, rounds about, 10 years old. Pops and Eddie have been all on the newspaper.
Rutherford Library, Holdus.
Right. And Ross Black, Milton Henry, Shelley Harpin, the legal team thought that it was best to counteract all the media attention that they were getting, because the feds had leaked the case to the media to basically attempt to try the case in the media, make it so they wouldn't be able to get a fair jury trial, to make them have to take a bench trial. So anyway, Eddie and Pops decide they're gonna do these interviews with Bill Bonds and Bob Bennett and Mort Krim and all of the anchors of the day. So I hear my mom and dad, because Daddy is asking Mom, well, they want to shoot one of the interviews at Eddie's house. You know, obviously I grew up next to Eddie Jackson. Or they're going to shoot one of the interviews at Eddie's house. They want to shoot the other interview at our house. And my mother's like, I'm not letting them people in my house. And my dad's like, Teresa, why are you being like that? She's like, I'm not going to participate in this circus. Why are you even getting on TV? And Dad's like, because they're saying we sell dope. And she's like, but you do sell dope. But he's like, but they're lying. And she's like, yeah, they're lying. And he's like, and the government is lying and about how we sell dope, or the details of how we sell dope. And the newspapers are saying that we got attack dogs and we live in this mafia compound. These dogs we had running around they were far from attack animals. The fact that, we had some, at the time, Gunther's state-of-the-art security, that was true. But we weren't living in this mafia fortress that the way the newspapers were depicting it. And I just remember thinking to myself at 10 years old, Daddy lies, the lawyers lie, the TV people lie, and the government lies.
Everybody but your mother.
Everybody lies, yeah.
And even for her, she was still accepting the life, so it wasn't like she left.
Right, so at a very early age, that
it was more of a band. It wasn't a quest for the truth. It was a fight for whose truth was going to win.
People do self-serving things. The newspapers, at 10 years old, I was able to the newspaper just want to sell newspapers. The TV people just want people to watch TV. The lawyers get paid to put daddy in jail. Daddy pay the lawyers not to go to jail. And everybody's in it just because everybody's just doing what they do, because in the end, everybody just want money. As a kid, you grew up the way I grew up, everybody's saying that the dope man is bad, but yet Daddy and Eddie and their friends are always the most admired people every place we go. So they keep telling me that the drug dealer is bad when I read the newspaper, but my real life experience is showing me that everywhere I go, these are the most admired people around. That everybody wants to be near them. That everybody comes to these same people who they're saying are the bad guys, but when regular people need help.
I tell her how much of that went on.
It's no exaggeration. My father has given away millions. My father's given away over $1 million in charity.
Just
family and friends over the course of his career.
And Eddie even more.
In the streets. And Eddie untold. Untold.
Well, your father had more time to do it, but
right.
They both gave a lot.
Both of them individually over $1 million. The part that again doesn't get spoke about. Unlike Chase Bank and NBD, when you borrow money from my father to send your kid to school, you don't get a student loan letter with interest talking about you need to pay me back for that money. Those guys, and I know I'm talking about an era and day long gone by, those guys saw it as their responsibility because, again, they're from that same community that people say they're preying on. Those are their friends. Those are the people they grew up with. That's the people who their sisters married. Those are the people that their brothers married.
About the drug users?
The drug users are the general community in general. So when you need, when your granddaughter call you and say that the people at the bursar's office said if tuition ain't paid by next week, you can't attend school no more, and something about a bunch of details that Pop and the Eddies of the world didn't care about, the Pell Grant didn't go through, or the loan papers wasn't right, or they say Daddy's a mailman, so he made $10 more than he was supposed to for me to qualify for financial aid, and now either I have to leave Michigan State and go to Wayne County, or I gotta pay out of pocket. Well, you know who you go to in the reality in our community? You go to that dope man who you know either directly or and it doesn't even have to be directly. You could be my wife's sister's friend's cousin who work at Michigan Bell. And you know that my friend Sandra got arrested. Sandra's sister is married to the big dope man. And he got money like that. And if I tell Sandra the plight that I'm in, she'll go to her sister, and her sister will tell her husband, you know, some good people down there to work with Sandra, and they got this situation. And guys like Pop gonna say, well, he gonna, not that he really care, because he already know it's a charity situation. Well, how much she needs so the kid can stay, so the girl can stay in school? She need $8,000. Well, come get it.
Oh, so pretty large amounts of money, not just $300.
No, that I ain't even counting those. I ain't counting the under $1,000. Because when you was getting money the way that at different periods, when, as the kids say nowadays, when we were up, when they know we up, I'm gonna give that away every day. I'm gonna give away $300 every day just leaving the house. What do you do? Because I'm saying that's the part where I get irritated predator. I go on the block to give away money. Pop them would go places with the intentions that we're gonna spread out some of this money. Because why? Because niggas be needing money.
So you guys, okay, they were doing their thing in the 70s.
Yeah.
Then you began helping your father in the 80s, cocaine, and then again, you guys, heroin in the 90s. When did there become I mean, at the time, you probably weren't thinking about it because you were caught up in it, but looking back, when was there a change in the nature of how the drug dealer in the black community went from that to maybe becoming more purely predator, or do you think it changed, or?
Well, yeah, we had some time to think about it, and shout out to the brother Cavario brought it up. My pops and them, and then people my age, we were the last generation on the African American community, period, to be raised by Jim Crow people. People my age, all the people who raised us were products of segregation and Jim Crow. So that sense of us against them, that sense of that we all we got, they lived it, they passed that on to us. That, you heard the stories. My parents, I used to leave the plush comforts of the suburbs to be dropped off at the King Homes or the Jeffrey Projects because they just felt it important that I know that this wealth we got now, these people out here ain't who we are. The people in the Brewsters and the Jeffreys and the King Homes, that's who we are. We just didn't hit a lick, but don't get it confused. That's who we are. That's where we come from.
And that's who you should be concerned about.
And that's who you should be concerned about. Because in the end, if this all falls apart,
that's where we're gonna go.
That's where we're going. So I think people, my generation, so after that, anybody younger than me or that came up that were not influenced by people who lived that Jim Crow segregation, that sense of community, that sense of, which ain't an accident why in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 20s, the number mans funded all of the businesses in the black community. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, still the main funding source for black entrepreneurship, at least on a small time level, mom and pop shops, was coming out of the narcotics trade because that's what it was. So I would say late 80s, I think the crack epidemic.
Was it the drug or was it the generation?
Both. I think it was the double whammy.
1973. The Detroit Free Press's front page proclaims dope kingpins get away with it. They had names like Jesse James, Pretty Ricky, the Black Greek, and Mr. Clean. 2 of the 12 men listed as Detroit's biggest heroin dealers were next-door neighbors, and in reality, they were the 2 largest heroin dealers in Detroit, dwarfing the other men on the list. Eddie the Fat Man Jackson, charismatic son of a pool hall owner, and his chief lieutenant, Courtney the Field Marshal Brown, a former city bus driver, had built an empire on a par with men like Nicky Barnes and Frank Lucas of New York. But theirs was a very different and in many ways more sophisticated operation than Barnes and Lucas's, based on family ties and finesse more than murder and mayhem. They truly were the Motown mafia, and the saga of Eddie Jackson, Courtney Brown, and their families stretched from the 1960s and into the present day. Starting in 1969, Eddie Jackson had built a tight inner circle of lieutenants like Charles Rudolph, Russell Clayton, Ronald 5-0 Garrett, Black Butch, and his right-hand man, Courtney Brown. All of them had grown up together in Detroit's old Black Bottom and Paradise Valley neighborhoods, forming an unbreakable foundation for their soon-to-come heroin empire.
In a city built on hustle, one man dared to dance with the devil. He was smooth, slick, and dangerous. This ain't no bedtime story. This is blood, bricks, and backstabs. This summer, loyalty is dead, and the streets are talking. The Devil is a Lie, a Big Boss Filmworks original. Narrated by the streets, told by the game, inspired by the truth.